hit record if you magic. Welcome. We are in the midst of this story of, I don't know, love and intrigue and rivalry, a story of competing values of strength for Torah as opposed to strength, physical strength, spiritual strength versus physical strength. Welcome. Okay, wait, more are coming in.
I can take care of this.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is reread the Talmudic story that we spent quite a bit of time on last week. I keep seeing it, so I keep letting them in, but I should let you do your job.
Yeah.
I'm a control freak. It's terrible. Okay.
Relax.
Okay, relax, Luis, relax. I don't think I'm able. Oh, and Rachel, you copied it so nice and big. Thank you. Look what she did with this tiny page.
We love that.
Oh, thank you. We're going to reread the Talmud story. We're going to remind ourselves about some of the motifs, and then we're going to jump into Ruth Calderon's version.
Wow, that's a long.
It is long, and I have decided, thank you, Gloria, that we're not going to do the whole thing today because we don't want to feel rushed, because we want to sink our teeth in and relish the skill that Ruth Calderon brings in rendering this story into a different kind of a narrative. So we are going to read the Talmud story, and then we're going to read half of the Ruth Calderon version.
Or get as far as.
Yeah, I mean, I have a sense of how far I think we should get, but we'll see. And then next week we'll finish it up. So, and I'm going to share my screen, which I almost forgot to do for our friends on Zoom. See, I'm already doing 30 things at once. Oh,
And all of them well.
oh, please. Okay.
Okay, no.
Making it larger. No, that's not good. I'm gonna go back down because that was bigger. Okay. So if anyone on the Zoom can't see well, please just
No,
let us.
it's very good. That's very good.
Thank you, Ira. I think we needed a little confirmation.
No,
Okay.
very good. Big letter.
So unfortunately, we're foregoing the Aramaic today. For all of you fluent Aramaic speakers, I apologize, but we're jumping into the English just as a refresher. And here we go. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in the Jordan River. Reish Lakish saw him and thought he was a woman. He jumped. Wait a second. Did it say?
No,
that
it didn't.
explicitly?
It did not say that.
Okay, that is not what it said.
No.
That is Rashi. I should have had it here on the side to confirm that. You know, these translations that add details, like we've been, oh, Ruth, come on. We expect more of you.
Well, she didn't want to.
It's a commentary, but it's going to show up in her version.
She
Yeah.
made it okay.
Yeah, well, okay. Lest we think that Reish Lakish was actually interested in bathing with Rabbi Yochanan.
Well, I did think that.
We did think it was,
So-
it is
so
a
she's
possible
making
reading.
Okay.
Reish Lakish saw him, no, she's making it heteronormative.
Yeah.
That's what she's done.
Oh, okay, didn't even occur.
Okay. But we'll forgive her. Reish Lakish saw him, bracketed, thought he was a woman, at least one possible reading. He jumped into the Jordan after him, dropped his spear in the water, and leapt to the other side of the river.
It's different.
You know,
Yeah.
it is different. Ruth Calderon chose to include commentaries within the translation. So let's acknowledge that. So next time, I actually had not noticed that. We'll be a little bit more attentive to reading the original. I could pull it up now, but it'll take too long for me to find it on my Safari. So I'm not gonna do that.
I have it from last.
Oh, you have it right there. Okay, so actually, if you don't mind, can I look at it at the same time? And I'll just see if there's, oh no, that's the fish pond. Wrong location, the Jordan River. Yeah, okay. Okay, I think the rest of it is probably okay, but let's see. When Rabbi Yochanan saw Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, that's his full name. Reish Lakish's full name is Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. He said to him, your strength should be for Torah. Reish Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, your beauty should be for women. Such a good retort.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yochanan said to him, if you will repent, which in the literal version is if you return, right, to be choser b'tshuva, lashuv, to return, to do teshuva, I will give you my sister who is more beautiful than I am. Great deal, Reish Lakish says. Reish Lakish accepted this arrangement. So then it says he tried to jump back out to bring his clothes, but was unable to return. But what this version is, he tried to retrieve his possessions and was unable to do so. Okay, it's not exactly, but it's about his stuff that he had left on the other side, clearly. Rabbi Yochanan taught him Torah and Mishnah and made him into a great man. In Aramaic, it's like Gavra Rabba, a big Rabba. Okay, Gavra, Gever, from Hebrew of Gever, a great man. One day they were debating in the study house, and here's the halachic debate: the sword, the knife, the hunting spear, the hand sickle, the harvesting sickle. At what stage do they become impure? That's the question. And the parentheses here just helps us understand, that is, at what stage in their production do they shift from being raw materials, which are not susceptible to impurity, to vessels that may contract impurity. So that's the question on the table. When is this tool considered this tool? And they answered, from the time they are completed. And when are they regarded as completed? And here's the debate. Rabbi Yochanan said, when they are refined in the furnace. Burning in fire makes something, or maybe someone, complete. Reish Lakish said, when they are polished with water. So I'm already drawing our attention to the water, which we talked about last time. Immersing in water is what makes something what it is. Rabbi Yochanan said, a thief knows the tool of his trade. Or in our translation last week, it was a bandit knows about banditry. Of course, you know about swords and knives. Reish Lakish, remember where you came from. So that is a dig, of course, because Reish Lakish answers. I know Marilyn was skeptical about whether that was a dig, but then Reish Lakish is offended.
I was
You want to
taking it
clarify?
up to that point.
Yes, line by line. Mhm.
Further, it confirms what the interpretation
Yes,
lends itself to.
thank you. A precise reader. I appreciate that. Reish Lakish said, and what good have you done for me? There, among the robbers, they called me master, and here, among the sages, they called me master. You said you made me a great man. I was a great man before, with or without
It
you.
was a lateral promotion.
Yeah, right. So Rabbi Yochanan is trying to lord himself over Reish Lakish because he is the one who made him great. Reish Lakish says, I was great before, and I'll always be great, with or without you. Rabbi Yochanan said, I have not done any good for you at all.
It wasn't questioned.
Yeah, that's not a good translation either. I have done good for you. Okay, wait a second. This is not the translation. I'm just going to read to you. And next time I'm not going to do this now that I've learned the hard way. What the text actually says is, Rabbi Yochanan said, I provided you benefit as I brought you under the wings of the divine presence. It's true, your status was a lateral move, but being master here under the divine presence is better than being master where you were before. So Rabbi Yochanan does have a retort. This is like a sparring.
Okay.
He says, you bandit. He says, what good did you do for me? I was great before. He says, yeah, you were great, but you were great in the wrong place. And now you're here. And then the scene ends and we learn Rabbi Yochanan's spirit grew weak. Reish Lakish grew ill. Oh, no. Oh, this was not. Sorry, wait. There's something missing here. We skipped a page. Okay, friends, it's going to be story time because our handout actually misses one page. Unless I opened the wrong, she
On the
sent me
bottom
two
of page
versions.
16.
So,
But it says 15 and 16.
Yes.
oh, it's just in the other, I see. Okay, so in my document, I have to skip ahead. Okay, I think I opened the wrong version here. Give me a moment. She sent me a correct version and I probably opened the non-corrected version. I see what I did. I opened the wrong version. We're right. And close the wrong one. Okay. Oh, I did it again. Okay. Is this all here? No, this is way lovely. Rachel, I seem to have opened the wrong version. Okay, I opened the right version now. Never mind. Sharing my screen again. Here we are. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us. Rabbi Yochanan's spirit grew weak. Reish Lakish grew ill. So everyone's not doing well. Rabbi Yochanan's sister, who is whom?
His wife.
The wife of Reish Lakish. So she is invested really in both of their well-being. Rabbi Yochanan's sister came and cried before him. Before whom? Before her brother. Clearly, because Rabbi Yochanan's spirit is weak, but Reish Lakish is the one who's physically ill. So Rabbi Yochanan's sister came and cried before her brother, Rabbi Yochanan, and said, "Look at me." Just looking at what this. No, she doesn't say that. He did not pay attention to her.
Is this Rashi making this up? or-
Yeah, totally. I can't believe Ruth Calderon is doing this. She's taken commentaries that help understand, like that help paint the scene. She's not really making this up, but she's taking commentaries and weaving it into this translation. She said, "Look at these children who will be orphans." He said to her, I'm going to quote you some text that's going to make you feel better. "Leave your orphans, I will sustain them." She said to him, "For the sake of my widowhood." He said to her, "And let your widows trust in me." And so he did nothing. He didn't pray for the recovery of Reish Lakish. So of course, what's going to happen next? Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish passed away. Rabbi Yochanan grieved very deeply. The rabbis said, "What will we do to bring him comfort? Let us send Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat to sit before him, since he is a brilliant scholar." They brought Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat before Rabbi Yochanan. In response to everything that Rabbi Yochanan would say, Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat would say to him, "Here's a text that supports you. You're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, Rabbi Yochanan." And Rabbi Yochanan said, "What is this? This is not what I missed. This is not what Reish Lakish was for me." Rabbi Yochanan said, "Do you think I need this? Whenever I used to say something to Reish Lakish, he would pose 24 objections and I would give him 24 solutions. But you just say to me, here is a supporting text. Don't I already know what I said was correct? I already know I'm right. What do I need out of a chavruta to refine my point?" And we talked quite a lot about this last week, about what is a true partnership and when are you using the other person just to sharpen your own argument. But whatever it was, this didn't bring Rabbi Yochanan any comfort. And so Rabbi Yochanan loses his mind. And that's the end of the story here. Rabbi Yochanan would walk about the gates of Tiberias where they were and cry, "Reish Lakish, where are you? Reish Lakish, where are you?" Ben Lakish is the original, that's fine. Until he lost his mind, the rabbis prayed for mercy for him and his soul came to its final rest. So Ruth Calderon, tell us this story. Retell us this
Your own
story.
words.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jordan River was the boundary. The city extended to its banks, and beyond it lay the Golan, a wilderness, a place of robbers and wild animals. I'm sorry, I didn't pause before jumping right in. Did anyone want to say anything before we jump right into this story? I felt like we were ready. Yeah, it took so long to get the handout. I didn't want to go anymore. Okay, but it does give us the geography very clearly. Not only that they were swimming in the Jordan River, but what city are they in? They're right at the Golan, so they're in the north of Israel. They're in Tiberia, they're in Tiberias. And they're on the edge of the wilderness. That's where the bandits roam. On the banks of the Kinneret, to the west, Tiberias flourished. Its city square was the site of a bustling, colorful marketplace on Monday and Thursday mornings. That's very Talmudic, by the way. This is why, does anybody know what we do on Monday and
They read the
Thursday?
Torah.
Yes, we have the Torah reading every Monday and Thursday because that was instituted
Because they were
for
there,
the market days.
you were guaranteed a minion.
Yeah, it was a, well, it was a time that people from the villages would actually come and
Yeah,
learn
we-
Torah,
yeah.
Monday and Thursday.
So we should open up.
The
a-
women of the villages, dressed in bright dresses, would stand behind fruit and vegetable stalls. The fishermen's wives from Capernaum would carry baskets of fish, and children would crowd around them in the filthy alleys, hoping for bags of small fish to use in their games. There's those fish,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Old fishermen would lean on benches, soothing their aching backs in the sun and telling stories to one another. They stretched out their nets between the pillars to dry in the morning sun. From time to time, a Torah scholar would make his way through the colorful hubbub in a clean, light cloak. He would greet passers-by, and they would make way for him. He would direct his steps toward the village beyond the market to the study house of Rabbi Yochanan, that basalt hall whose windows looked out over the Sea of Tiberias. What has she done so far in setting this scene? What has she told us about the way Torah scholars are treated, the way the system, the society works?
Well, the environment is dirty. It's a rabble kind of thing. People sitting here, there, it's very disorganized, but it's very organic and very low class.
And colorful.
Yes, yes. And the Torah scholar is detached. His clothes is clean.
Right.
He's like,
It's the first use of the white collar word.
The
Yes,
white
the
collar,
very
the
good. The
intellectual.
intellectual.
Yes, the
Ivory
work of the
tower.
mind,
Yes,
the
yes.
scholar. Yes, and his hands will be clean and
Smooth.
and not that of the worker. And also the way that she puts the hubbub of the market up against the wilderness of the beyond out there. Like those robbers, they're not part of society, right? The bandits that we met them just by a reference to the wilderness beyond. Now here is the society, here is the kind of the exchange of people and ideas and so on.
But the rabbi.
And the
tells us
rabbi is also outside, but in
Because
a
he's looking at the sea. He doesn't look at the.
yes, he looks over the Sea
the
of
hubbub.
Tiberias. He's separated from society in a different way. Right. So actually, I never thought of this before. They have something in common.
Sure.
They're both aloof.
Outliers.
They're outliers. They're marginal.
Ivory tower,
Ivory tower and
basalt tower.
what would we call the criminal? Like the underworld.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're both in their own. Yeah. Marilyn, did you want to say something?
No, I just had a feeling of me being a drone.
Yes, yes, but she does such a great job of that.
Geographical layout as well as eco-economical, societal.
And I'm seeing a comment in the chat that he goes beyond the market. That's right. The Torah scholar goes through, people part, Torah scholars coming, goes through and then beyond, right to the study house.
Marilyn, you could never be a drone. You're much too expressive.
On Mondays and Thursdays, the study house served as a courtroom. So this actually also was what happened. That was the market days would be the Torah reading days, which was, okay, this is not all this is happening at the same era necessarily that these different things are instituted, but Mondays and Thursdays would also be court days. And people would come to air their grievances. Merchants arrived to settle disputes about a contract. Grooms came to complain that their bride had not proven a virgin. Widow, and this is coming from other tractates in the Talmud, by the way.
Yeah.
She's not making this up.
Mhm.
Widows showed up to request the allowance due after their husband's death, right? Come to cash in your ketubah. That's the ketubah contract. But on this particular morning, the court was not in session. The door was locked. And inside, the sages were reviewing their learning before Rabbi Yochanan, one of the greatest teachers of their generation. His book of legends rested in a niche in the wall. People would come to the study house in the hope of catching sight of the storied volume, but the guard at the door would not let anyone touch it. So he's untouchable, his knowledge is untouchable, and even the court would not be holding court. because he was holding court. Okay, I can't believe we just did all that. Rabbi Yochanan, the head of the academy, gave himself over to the text like a sculptor standing before a block of marble. In his study house, the students would whittle away at verses and chisel out laws and legends. So she's getting very physical in the non-physical work. In the future, of course, the collection of their discussions and sayings would be known as the Palestinian Talmud, the Talmud Yerushalmi. So she, with the advantage of hindsight, says, these are formative conversations that are going to be recorded for posterity forevermore. That's how important it is, what's happening in there. Let's keep going. The scholars of Tiberias were fine men. Their work trained their minds, honed their speech, and did not tax their bodies. She's already setting this up, right? She wants us to think of Rabbi Yochanan in a particular context, a non-physical context. And then we're going to meet Reish Lakish, his foil. Their fingers were long and thin like those of artists. The color of their skin was white, like the inside of an almond. From dawn to dusk, they remained inside the study house with no distractions and no contact with the outside world. And this is the stereotypical yeshiva student, pale, thin, refined, not athletic. It's hard for the boys that don't fit that mold, right? Who need to be active, and it's a very interesting tension.
It's like shtizzle, like
Yes, exactly. All the tension they experienced was between themselves and the text, right? Who are we fighting with? We're fighting with the words.
Yeah.
Between a precise logical structure and a brilliant creative interpretive process. They competed with themselves and with one another, and together they constituted an exclusive club. Though they were not priests, they were strict about eating all their meals in a state of purity, and they dedicated themselves to the pursuit of mastery. There's the word mastery. What the reference to though they were not priests means though they're not born into this requirement of holiness, of the sacred, they opt into it. Remember, the priestly class, the Kohen is by birth. And if you're a Kohen, you're going to be eating tithes. You're going to be eating holy foods that require you to always be thinking about what have I touched and where have I been? And did I go to a cemetery and I have to immerse, or I don't go to a cemetery and all this stuff. But they were zealous beyond the requirements of the law. They were zealous for purity.
Is it still like that today in the very religious?
No, but there is, so this idea of immersing in the mikveh, which is not required, is a very popular thing for Hasidic men to do in the ultra-Orthodox community, to do once a week on Friday before Shabbat, or even every morning, sometimes they do before studying Torah, and it's understood to be not required, but a nice custom. So maybe that is what she's making reference to, but they're looking for a higher state of purity that is not required of them.
Because my grandson's in a yeshiva, but I guess there's different levels.
Yeah, different customs, and it's also for some reason become more in the Hasidic mystical traditions as opposed to the yeshivas, the misnagdish, which are like the intellectual yeshivas. Like there's the spiritual and the intellectual in different pockets of the communities. Within the ultra-Orthodox community, there's a spectrum there, right? There's the black hats, and then there's the strimals. I'm not trying to generalize, but I'm saying, we think ultra-Orthodox are all monolithic. Of course they're not. So there are those who are going to say, what do I need to dunk and immerse in a mikvah? I don't have that requirement. I'm going to sit and learn the law, right? They're the intellectuals, and others who say, well, there's a purity, there's a spiritual, there's some other aspect. So I don't know which yeshiva your grandson is in.
I'm not sure, but I know he's very athletic and
which city?
Jerusalem.
Oh, he's in Jerusalem.
But is it a black hat yeshiva?
No,
Okay, no. So they
I
wouldn't be.
don't think so.
And I mean, to be fair, there are so many different yeshivas, and many of them, work into the day, like a tiyul, a hike out, and a basketball game. Like it's not all or nothing.
Yeah, my son is in a black hat. My grandsons are in black hat yeshiva in Jerusalem, but they're always up for a baseball game, a
There you
basketball
go.
game. Rappelling and
Right,
jeeping.
right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think she's painting a very stark picture that I'm not saying it doesn't exist. You go to the Mir Yeshiva, they sit for 12 hours a day over a Talmud.
Well, in Shtisel,
But
that's what it's certainly.
In
looks like.
Shtisel and right, when you see these shows, you get a glimpse of that. Okay.
Choice.
Now, a choice few were designated for Torah study in their youth, sometimes even before birth, but not everyone who wanted to learn merited a place in the study house. People liked to say that one should be mindful of the children of poor people because Torah may come forth from them, but this did not happen often. So this was a kind of a birthright. Although everyone was proud of the occasional blacksmith's son who rose from the alleys in the east to the ranks of Rabbi Yochanan's academy, the majority of the students were from more well-off families. So it's a place of privilege where you can keep your hands clean. When a family merited to enroll one of its sons in Rabbi Yochanan's academy, it was a source of tremendous pride. Those who wore the cloaks of Torah scholars were treated with respect wherever they went. They held themselves to a higher standard. They would not eat in public. They did not while away their hours in idle chatter. Silence forms a protective fence around wisdom, they knew, which is actually a quote from, I believe, Proverbs, Mishle, Siag lechochma shtika. Oh, it might have been Pirkei Avot. I should have Googled that. But that's an understanding that people who have wisdom don't run off at the mouth so much, don't talk so much. As young men, they were much sought after matches for the young women of the community. Emissaries would come each spring to survey the current crop of students. Very few were still single by the time they reached their 20th birthday. So these are the boys that are a good catch. So she has spent quite a lot of time building up for us the world of Rabbi Yochanan. So we're going to now leave that world aside and meet a very different social strata and a very different person. Beyond the river, so there's a border there, at the boundary of the fields, on the foothills of the Golan, between canyons carved into the rock, live a gang of highway robbers with a clear hierarchy among them. So there too, there's a hierarchy. It's setting him up, by the way, for saying, I was master here, now I'm master here, but you weren't the one who pulled me up. I was always at the top.
Mhm.
At the helm is the man known as Reish Lakish, the strongest of them all. So what gives you the hierarchy? Your physical strength, who leads the men in their occasional visits to Tiberias. There he stands tall and barefoot in the center of the marketplace, surrounded by admiring gazes. So he also has shown up in the marketplace, a rare visit. He doesn't spend time there. And everybody sees him. I imagine him also, I imagine Rabbi Yochanan also very tall, but it didn't describe him necessarily that way. He was white and pure. But Reish Lakish is head and shoulders above everybody. His physical stature is more important here.
But also they make way for him too. Like, in other words, these are the
Yes,
two,
right, right. It's like, you know, the scene in like the Western, the Western movie, the cowboy Western, like the bar, the opens, right? Thank you. And, you know, you see first their feet and the clink of their boots approaching.
Then you see their guns.
Yeah, and then the room parts, right? So here too, he is trailed.
And Beauty and the
Yeah.
Beast, honestly,
He is trailed by hushed whispers. Women peer out their windows to catch sight of him. Anyone whom Reish Lakish acknowledges with a look of an eye or a slap on the back is regarded with awe for weeks to come. Such a man will hold his head high as if Reish Lakish's aura has rubbed off on him, and merchants will let him buy on credit. Wow, you must be important and even trustworthy because Reish Lakish is.
But there seems like there's a lot more, I mean, it's a much more animated kind of
Yes.
respect and admiration. This is
Ah.
groupie. They're like groupies. Like when the Torah
right, the slap
scholars
on the
came,
back.
when the
Yeah.
Torah scholars came, they like respect.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Not excitement. This
Yeah.
is like, everybody's like,
Because the common folk could admire him and understand
Yeah.
his world a little
Yeah.
bit. Reish Lakish's gang are men of honor, dark and quiet men who sit tall on their horses. They are cruel, but within limits. They do not kill women and they do not kill merely for the sake of killing. They never break their word.
This is Robin Hood.
Even in banditry, yeah, they're honorable people. So we know Rish Lakish is not disrespected, is not, yeah, okay, so he's a pirate, he's a bandit, he's a whatever, however he makes his money, we're not going to talk about it. If you cross him, he'll kill you, but you kind of deserved it. But he's not going to kill your wife. That would be cruel.
So this is like mafia stuff. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
And people did admire the mafia. Yeah. Look who loved The Sopranos. Like it was like
true.
Everybody loved it.
On that particular day, the market was engulfed by an oppressive heat wave. So that, by the way, the weather applies to everyone equally. Everybody feels the heat. And thank you, Michael. I see your comment. We always need to remember that Rish Lakish had 2 lives, both as the robber and then as the scholar. Right. So we're setting up his previous life here. First, when he was the robber, they had to let him buy on credit. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't have a choice. When Rish Lakish comes to town,
If they didn't, he'd take it.
exactly.
So-
It didn't matter.
So
You
better
were
that you're in
losing out
control, so
anyway.
I'll give it to you.
So the heat wave is oppressive. Just before evening, Rabbi Yochanan went out with his students to bathe in the Jordan. I guess that would have been a little bit rare, but it's the end of the day. They've done their learning for the day. The water, which was still warm from the sun, was a pleasure they reserved for the end of a long day of study. There we go. That's right. I remember now. Rabbi Yochanan waited alone. How nice it was to feel himself in his body. She's putting us into his thoughts. That's very bold. To envelop himself in the darkness and the water, still absorbed in thoughts of the waning day. His students stayed on the bank of the river, guarding Rabbi Yochanan, respecting his nakedness by averting their eyes, but struck nonetheless by the light that shone forth from his skin. They say that a man's wisdom will light his face. Chochmat ish ya'ir panav. But with Rabbi Yochanan, it was his arm that was illuminated, or so it appeared in the soft light of the dying day. He bathed alone in the middle of the river. So what do you make of this? That he's alone, that he's naked, but we don't want to see his body. There's a physicality, there's an acknowledgement of his physicality, and even in his own mind that he actually, there is something neck down here, but
Yeah.
but we cover it in the
But
water.
it's a very feminine image in the sense that a woman's modesty, she likes to bathe alone.
Mhm.
And of course, in a movie,
And they-
oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Can't you
Yeah.
hear the hoofs coming?
Right.
They also,
Right.
they respect him with distance,
Yeah.
in a way that it's not like that gang, like it's not the men's locker room. It's
Right.
it's the women's locker room, right? There's maybe private stalls, right? So
Yes.
I'm just going off on your
Yeah.
observation about it being maybe feminine in that way. Yeah.
But he also seems to be touched by the divine with the light coming
Yes.
down, the
Yeah.
Renaissance,
Yes, and his-
Rembrandt
That's
lights.
Moses
The
coming
strength
down
of its
with the-
physicality has to do with his spiritual
Yeah.
brightness. and
Yes.
light.
But when I keep thinking about his womanly appearance, and to me, that would have been the softness of his skin, the
Yeah,
whiteness of his skin.
Yeah.
And maybe round shapes of his skin, because he wasn't
Mhm.
brawny.
right,
Mhm.
or
right.
muscular.
He's not muscular, right? We know he was very beautiful. He was regarded as very beautiful. Okay. Suddenly, a cloud of dust and a blur of horses appear across the river. All right. Rish Lakish's band halted before the water, thinking about the gang that had tried to conquer their part of their turf. The day's adventures still clung to them like dust. Rish Lakish stiffened in his saddle and gazed across the river. He saw a white body.
Oh.
The ivory splendor of the skin and the rhythmic motion of the swimming limbs filled him with a sense of longing and excitement that preceded so many of his great conquests. This is the one, he was convinced. He was aroused by a sense of beauty and wonder. You stay here, he instructed his men.
Uh-huh.
He unfastened his belt,
Oh,
stripped and entered the water without thinking.
There you go.
He planted his spear in the shallow waters and leapt into the current toward the bathing figure. So
This
he's
is
going to have a
such
conquest.
imagery,
It was
or
already
metaphor.
dark, nearly night, but his eyes saw clearly. This was no woman. Oh no,
Yeah.
what have I done? Rish Lakish was embarrassed. So she sets him up as vulnerable now. Vulnerable in there in the water, naked, thrown off, kind of off his game a little bit, maybe. His thoughts swirled, but the surprise presented a different sort of opportunity. and he gave himself over to the magic of the moment. Rabbi Yochanan, whose strength lay in his command of knowledge, of language, recovered first. So she's being she's hitting us over the head with it a little bit.
Yeah.
His strength is physical, his strength is language. So he realizes this bandit here mistook him, but he's going to get the upper hand. Your strength should be for Torah. Like maybe Rabbi Yochanan is thinking, here's an opportunity. He's come right to my doorstep. Maybe I can convert him. Your strength should be for Torah, he said to the savage who was cutting through the water toward him. He doesn't know who Reish Lakish is, even though everyone in the marketplace, of course, knows. The robber slowed down and smiled. Your beauty should be for women, he responded seductively in a tone that could be interpreted in several ways. At that moment, it seemed anything could happen.
She writes.
Right. I don't know. What is Reish Lakish really thinking? Though he relished the dangerous thrill of the moment, Rabbi Yochanan did not allow his thoughts to drift too far. So Rabbi Yochanan reins himself in. And
where are his thoughts going?
I don't know. He's thinking,
Thrill?
This
Like-
is, I'm bathing
Yeah.
I've never been bathing with someone else. They always stay on the shore.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he spoke again like a gambler laying a card on the table. So in that instant, he makes a snap judgment. If you will forsake your world, and come study Torah with me, I will give you my sister, who is even more beautiful than I am. Something happened there in the water. Reish Lakish, the fiercest man in the Talmud, came back to the fold. He wanted to go retrieve his possessions, but there was no turning back. So there's the whole, he couldn't get back. He couldn't get his spear. An unfamiliar weakness overtook him. This had seemed like just another conquest, but it was in fact a rebirth. So he has a conversion moment right there in the water, which of course, by the way, in conversions in Judaism, that's the last step, right? We immerse in the mikvah. So he is immersed.
Mhm.
He is converted. Reish Lakish's men on the other side of the river, abandoned by their leader, waited a while before heading back the way they had come. Reish Lakish never followed. Yes, ma'am.
It brings us back to when a vessel is
Yeah.
made pure
Mhm.
and
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So he is purified in that water. It doesn't bring us back there yet because we haven't read it. When we read it, we'll think of this moment because that was later in the debate in the study hall. It brings us
Oh,
back.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to.
I'm trying to be precise.
Okay.
It means that according to the text, that was when he was made pure according to.
Yes.
Rabbi
Yes.
Yochanan's version, which would be by water.
Rabbi
a
Yochanan said by fire
by
and Reish
fire.
Lakish said by
Okay,
water.
so
Yes.
fire
'Cause
is
he had-
passion
Yes.
and
Yes.
water is purity.
Yes. Precisely. It is pointing to
But the
this.
passion is forbidden
moment.
passion. So it is like a sublimation of a forbidden passion. Is that what, I mean,
Maybe, right. But the two men are both on fire.
yeah,
And then it sizzles in the water and he sublimates his physicality to Torah.
But his spear, he cannot go back to his spear.
well.
Right.
So you have your dichotomy set up.
Yeah, but
Right.
In a different,
Spear is also.
Fire and water.
a spear.
physical-
Fighting.
What's that?
Well, it also has a sexual.
You think it's a
That's-
phallic image? Just say it.
But
Yeah,
it's possession.
could be.
It's possession. He can't-
But Rabbi Yochanan says, okay, I'll give you my sister. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Well, he
channel this in
recognized-
an
he
appropriate way.
recognizes that.
I have a shidduch for you. She's a good, comes from a good Torah scholar family. That's how we're going to tame Reish Lakish's passion.
So there's a
It's
message
also
here
how Rabbi Yochanan is going to sublimate his own
Yeah, maybe.
attraction.
to
At
Rabba.
least in
like,
Ruth
I'll
Hallam's
give
version.
you my
She
sister.
she is raising that to the surface.
But there's
yeah.
a moral here. You might have dangerous ideas, you might have dangerous
Mm.
attractions, but there's a way to do something.
Yeah.
Offset them.
Yeah,
And this is
Yeah.
the way to do it.
right.
So-
It still can be present, but there's a place for it.
Yeah, but it's
But the fact,
Annie has a comment. I would love to ask our friends on Zoom before we continue, if you have any thoughts. So go ahead, Annie.
the fact that he's giving him his sister is showing great respect to his idea that he will stay, quote unquote, converted, that he will follow the faith.
Oh,
So
he
that, yeah,
tried.
that
Mm.
alone makes the guy like more likely to succeed because Rabbi Yochanan
Well,
had
right.
great faith.
Also, what you're saying is making me think, if he's then bound by marriage, if he says yes to this, he can't turn back. If you become part of the family,
It seals the deal.
it's a little bit more irreversible. I mean, of course, there's divorce, whatever there could be, but not only come learn with me, but be married to my family. There's another layer of, it's not about his sister as a person, although she's going to make it about who his sister was as a person. We're going to get to that soon.
It's a commitment.
But it reminds me of Abraham, who saved himself by saying Sarah was his sister, and this guy's saving himself by offering his sister.
Yeah, that's true. I saw that Naomi had a comment. I saw you said in the chat, and I see you're unmuted. Did you want to?
Yeah, I was
You wanna
thinking
jump in,
about
chime in?
when he couldn't go back to retrieve his things. It's like he just not going back.
Yes. Yes.
To me, it's
Yes,
like a
exactly.
metaphor.
Exactly. There's no turning back. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
On the Zoom want to add anything or ask something in this
I
moment?
wanted to
Okay.
say, it goes back to what Marilyn said, that when the spear, when you're welding an implement, when you dip it in the water is when it hardens and it can't be going back to its
Oh, yeah,
molten
that's right.
state. And so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
once he was immersed, he
That was
couldn't
it.
go back.
And Farla, what did you want
Well,
to say?
what I was thinking of is it's about life, the purity of these two men. They have to stay pure. But then there's also real life where there's attraction, sexual and all that. But you have to keep that under control.
Yes, and channeling
And-
that into the
and-
system.
To
so to
stay
speak.
pure.
Well, we don't know if
So-
Raish had ever
Raish.
expressed his,
We're
yeah,
on first name basis now.
yeah, Raish, tell us about your conquest. No, he had other conquests. It doesn't say, maybe they weren't all women. I mean,
Mm. Yep.
so
We don't know
purity
about
was
his-
never his thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's explicit, but I think he's shocked when it's not a woman,
Yeah,
Maybe.
and embarrassed.
yes.
That wouldn't be the manly thing to go bathe with another man
No.
who's very attractive.
No, but it could be normal. in the
Of course.
thoughts.
And by the way, I want you to understand when I'm saying these things that sound very homophobic, I'm trying to put myself into that era,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Obviously. So let's move on.
Yeah.
The next scene takes place indoors. So we've left, we're not outdoors, we're not in the wild, we're not in the river, we're not in the wilderness where the robbers hang out. We're inside in the study house. So I think she's a little heavy-handed here, but thank you, Ruth Calderon. The next scene takes place indoors in the world of the study house. Rabbi Yochanan cleared a space for Reish Lakish near his place by the window, right, where he was looking out over the sea. And the initial encounter between them in the Jordan was replicated each day in the world of Torah. Remember, Torah is likened to water. They are immersed together in an intimate moment, one-on-one, day after day, just like that moment in the Jordan. So she wants us to believe that that was not a one-time event, that these two men had developed an intimacy through their daily study. Each morning, the two men would plunge into new waters. Those students who came early grew accustomed to finding the two of them learning together after dawn. Dark olive-colored skin next to pale ivory. 4 flailing arms. Reish Lakish speaks slowly. His voice is muffled and a bit hoarse. His northern accent is noticeable when he speaks. Sometimes he confuses his aleph and ayins. But Rabbi Yochanan finds this endearing. There is something unpolished in his movements. He likes this. He likes that there's a roughness. And even the lack of knowledge, maybe Rabbi Yochanan kind of enjoys that. This is where Rabbi Yochanan is stronger. This kind of hints at the conflict, I think. At times he is playful like a young boy. At other times he is silent like an old man. His presence brings new energy to the study house, right? Reish Lakish is multidimensional. He's not black and white. He's colorful in a different way. The teachings they study somehow seem different, new, as if those who speak them are finally able to free themselves of old ideas and prior notions. Come on, Reish Lakish, give us your read, the older students urge him. The younger ones want to see his scars. They ask him to tell them about hunting and wait patiently to hear him speak.
You see, this is very interesting because it suggests that the study house is a place, no matter how much it's good for your intellect and everything, but it's a emasculating place in a sense. And that this is intrinsic to masculinity, to this, that what he's bringing to this place is something that is a fresh, it's fresh, and it's going to be the combination of the
And
two.
he's, because he's an outsider, he contributes more because he
Yeah,
doesn't come
fresh
with the
blood,
old
yeah.
assumptions. And it's a different masculinity here in the study house. It is still a one-upping, but he piques their curiosity. And it's a rougher, he has rougher edges. Yes, and he brings passion. I see the comments in the chat. He brings a new passion.
He also brings secular life experience. which
Well,
these
right, that's
people
going to
don't
come up.
have, so.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Rabbi Yochanan does not mind. So she says that because we would think he might mind. This is kind of this upsets his whole equilibrium. Welcome, welcome. Better late than never. We're happy you're here.
I know.
Rabbi Yochanan does not mind. Do you want to share? We have plenty of handouts. Sometimes he even smiles. Someone once heard him laughing. Rabbi Yochanan laughing. Someone once heard him laughing in the late afternoon when Reish Lakish taught him how to sing the jingles of the robbers. Rabbi Yochanan noticed a few dubious expressions on the faces of his students, those who could not understand how he, the head of the academy, could learn with a highway robber and ignoramus. So Reish Lakish is really shaking things up, and Rabbi Yochanan kind of plays along. At times, Rabbi Yochanan feared his new student, because when Reish Lakish got angry, he would switch unconsciously to the voice of a gang leader. That's his past life is rearing its ugly head. Sometimes his fist was clenched as if he were about to hit someone, and there would be a moment of fear. On his way to and from the study house, Rabbi Yochanan found himself imitating Reish Lakish's jaunty stride without noticing it. He would wake up in the morning with dreams of Reish Lakish still fresh in his mind. His legs carried him back and forth again and again to visit with his sister, but his thoughts were always elsewhere. Now we're going to hear about his sister. So what she's done is she brought us into the world of Rabbi Yochanan. Then she brought us into the world of Reish Lakish. Then we had the encounter in the river, and Reish Lakish bringing a little bit of his world into the study house, which is exciting and threatening at the same time. Okay. I'd like to get to the sister part. This was what I was hoping to get to today, and then we'll pause until next time. His sister was indeed more beautiful than he was. So what Ruth Calderon has done is she's taken the sister is just that one line. I'll give you to my sister. Well, who is this sister? Can we learn a little bit more about this woman? We'll see her come later to her brother, begging for mercy. Please pray for my husband. So what's their relationship like? Let's hear more. And she builds this whole world of the sister and the brother. I guess I'm trying to frame it that way because the text gives her permission to do that. Because it shows us that there is a connection, that the sister thinks that she has the right to go tell Rabbi Yochanan what to do. And he has the right to just offer his sister without even asking, which of course is typical in those days, but still there's a connection there. His sister was indeed more beautiful than he was. At the age of 14, she admired her older brother as young girls are wont. When she was younger, he used to tell her stories. Noah was a righteous man in his generation. Noah walked with God. That's a direct quote from the Torah, right? He's teaching her Torah. They would sit on the roof by the bundles of wheat spread out to dry. As a child, Rabbi Yochanan rarely spent time with the other boys. there's that effeminate
Mhm.
reference. His sister was never taught Torah because of the saying, if one teaches his daughter Torah, it is as if he teaches her foolishness. Like, of course, we know girls would never have been taught Torah. And so they found solace in their time alone together. Yochanan loved sharing his thoughts with her. He noticed that her questions always led somewhere new. Her eyes would light up, and the words of Torah that he quoted with such ease would appear to her like images. How did the babies in their mother's wombs see God when the sea split during the Exodus? How did the cherubs look? What was the fruit that Eve gave to Adam? What she's doing here, there's a lot of subtext here about what happens when you don't teach Torah to women. What happens when you finally open the doors of teaching Torah to women? They think differently, and they're going to enrich Torah study. And they're going to maybe imagine things and bring questions that none of the boys would have the ability to bring.
Can I just ask you, when the boys are immersed in this, the religious boys are not allowed to see women,
Right.
girlfriends,
Right.
until they're what, 20?
Ready for marriage,
Ready for
18.
marriage.
Not 20.
Well, in those days, it would have been even younger, right?
But what
16,
about-
17, 18.
But
Yeah,
what about for girls?
they're in the women's world.
Are
I
they
mean,
allowed to-
and not just in the religious world. Think about 1,000, 2,000 years ago. The women all day spent the time baking the bread, washing the clothes, keeping the house. The men were in the field. If they were lucky enough, they were in school.
How can women
But-
see men? The men are not allowed to see women.
Yes, true.
Doesn't
And the women were too busy to see men.
but
they-
they were not allowed, so.
No one's allowed to see each other, but the families had made an arrangement. Oh, I have a son, you have a daughter. In another 10 years, we'll make sure this
What about
match
today?
happens.
What about
So
today?
today it depends, again, it's a spectrum. How much mixing is allowed among the genders, how much matchmaking is real pure matchmaking, and how much it's, oh, I saw that this friend of mine has a brother, we hung out at the Shabbos table. Like I hesitate to say any one description of a very varied community. Okay. So, but I just want to say, I think Ruth Calderon is painting this picture of Rabbi Yochanan's sister very intentionally, that Rabbi Yochanan, this is his first chavruta.
That's what I was just gonna say, exactly.
But this is not the model that he ends up with Reish Lakish. He's really learning from her. Later with Reish Lakish, we'll see he's using Reish Lakish to sharpen himself. They wouldn't be able to, I'm just seeing in the chat, they wouldn't be able to answer their questions. They would be challenged. Yeah, they would be challenged by the questions of the girls. When she grew older, she realized how beautiful she was. The women warned her to beware of idle men in the marketplace. Such things had been known to happen. They hardly let her leave home alone, confining her to household labor. Their mother said that on the previous holiday, people had begun mentioning her as a suitable match. So she's coming of age, right? She understood what was happening when a wealthy man with an unwed son came into their yard, but she was in no rush to get married. Here I dust cupboards and there I would dust cupboards. I think, by the way, that's an echo of what Reish Lakish is going to say later.
Yes.
Here I was a
a
master,
master.
there I was a master. Here I dust cupboards, there I dust cupboards. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
A woman's life is a woman's life. Why not stay here with mother? And shouldn't Yochanan get married first? He's older than I am. All right. This sounds like siblings.
Yeah.
She loved visiting the study house, the workshop of Rabbi Yochanan. You see that language?
Yeah.
Far away from the sharp cries and pungent odors of the marketplace. The students in the study house were as gentle as women. Thank you, Ruth. They never harassed her with catcalls, right? They were respectful, the students. They lived in their world of words and pages, studying with one another. She thought of it as Yochanan's ark, right? That reference to Noah, in which the Torah scholars saved themselves by learning in pairs, and everyone else was left outside to drown in the flood. It's a really lovely image.
Yeah.
And how intelligent she is, how perceptive. Like, she is a real catch, actually.
But why isn't Yochanan married?
I don't know. I have to look this up. Do we know anything about his personal life? whether is he the one that said, my love is for Torah?
Yeah, but that's
I
a
don't
cop out.
know if it was, yeah, let me look that up. Naomi's laughing. We're gonna stop soon, so I want to just get to another couple of paragraphs, like the next 2 paragraphs, and then we'll stop. Her hasty engagement to Reish Lakish surprised everyone. I have found a groom for my sister, said Yochanan. Their parents did not object, in spite of preliminary talks they had already conducted with the parents of another young man. That man's family was somewhat disgruntled, but her parents paid them to compensate for their disappointment. Okay, it's how it worked, right? Rabbi Yochanan's sister agreed to the match, even though she wasn't swooning with love. She was used to complying with her brother's wishes, and she was flattered by all the excitement. This is her simple life. Cupboards are cupboards. Okay. Just before they performed the betrothal ceremony under a prayer shawl spread out beneath the dome of heaven. Just before summer, excuse me, I left that word out. That's the betrothal ceremony, the Kiddushin, which they designate them to one another, but they're not yet wed. There were speeches and refreshments and a discussion about the dowry. The whole world showed up. Even if everyone knows why a bride goes under the wedding canopy, nobody talks about it. They watch the new couple, the longing in their eyes, their long arms, one dark and one light. A shiver passed through the crowd at the moment the ring was placed on the bride's finger. Is it worth a pretty penny? Mazel tov, soon by you, Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish recited the 7 blessings that the sages had designated for wedding ceremonies. Rabbi Yochanan's lips moved along with him. There's the love triangle.
Yeah.
The sages who stood in a circle around them leaned in to hear the particular version he used. There were debates during those times about the text of these blessings. The marriage document was handed to the crying mother. It all passed like a dream. So they got married. They didn't fully get married. There was a space between the betrothal and then the wedding itself really was when she goes home and they start their life together. We're going to stop here because you see, as was customary, the engaged girl remained in her parents' home for another year. That's the way it used to be historically. The betrothal and the wedding were separate. These 2 ceremonies, which we call Kiddushin and Nisuin, nowadays happen together under the chuppah on one day. That was because of broken engagements and all kinds of complications that arose from the separating of those 2 ceremonies. But
did the couple see each other during that year?
yeah,
Were they able to go
yes,
walking together?
which might have been how they got to know each other
Yes.
after the betrothal.
Well,
So, so we're gonna wait and see what happens with this couple
leave us
and the brother and the sister. Those of you who are in person, you can take it home and read ahead.
No,
It's
no,
fine.
no,
I'm
no,
fine
no.
with it. No,
No.
I'm fine.
yeah. Yeah.
I told you you could buy the book, as Marco already did. And I just
She writes so beautifully.
I love her writing, and she is doubling down on all the
Yeah.
things that we mined in last week's class.
Yeah.
All of these dichotomies and the women and the men and the dark and the light and the mind and the body, different kinds of strength. And then this relationship between the 2 men is going to heat up.
She's not paying as much attention to the relationship between Yochanan and his sister though, because there's some questionable relationship
Right.
there as well.
Yeah,
But she's really,
yeah. I mean, I think she did a lot more than the text
Yeah,
itself.
no, I understand,
did.
but when you were saying the love triangle, I think many people were thinking that.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Reish Lakish-
So she writes about it in her
Well, let's
in her
wait for it.
commentary, but I'm trying to remember where
Anyway,
yeah, she doesn't
it's-
explicitly say that. It's just kind of beneath the surface.
There's a hand in the comment.
There's a hand in the Zoom room. Thank you.
Me.
Eileen, say
Yeah.
something.
I feel that Rabbi Yochanan was in a rush to pair off Reish Lakish with his sister because it would maybe suppress his own desire for Reish Lakish.
Yeah, feels like he's sublimating his desire by making this match. And the chat comment question about the breaking of the plate. So that ceremony in the weddings, the religious weddings, the breaking of the plate is the Tanaim, where they would write up the conditions of marriage. And breaking the plate says, yes, these two families agree to this dowry. And we do that now. It actually does represent the betrothal in a different way. We do that also on the day of, we just do everything on the same day
Mhm.
because the only thing we have sometimes is a l'chaim or an engagement party that isn't binding. The idea was basically if the engagement was binding and then the couple decided or the families decided not to go through with the wedding, that couple needs a get. They're bound to one another
Really?
legally, even though they're not yet fully
But if they
married.
haven't had
So-
sexual relations, could they be annulled? Like, isn't that a ground
It
for
was,
annulment?
I'm not familiar enough with what this get would have been different
not
to
allowed.
what we understand today, but it was still a legally binding arrangement. They, even if they weren't living together, they weren't officially wed, but the betrothal was legally binding. And that just got really messy. So we kind of put it all together on the same day. And so it broke.
My niece had that ceremony. It was called something else.
Vort, maybe?
Hmm?
No, the Tanaim.
No, it wasn't called that. Anyway, I'll ask my sister, but anyway.
Okay, we're gonna stop
Because
here.
You can't
Thank you,
separate.
everyone.